Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to do a request by Robin Burke, one of my viewers, who wanted me to talk about the 2010 movie called The Runaways. In this movie, we had Kristen Stewart portraying Joan Jett, and we had Dakota Fanning as Cherie Currie. And I saw this movie in the theaters when it came out in 2010, and I saw it again later when I had this Blu-ray. But what I'm going to do for this review is I'm going to consult some notes that I took 16 years ago in 2010, and I'm going to be occasionally reading and looking up and down, so please bear with me for that. These are my thoughts on The Runaways. Now, I became a huge fan of Joan Jett with her first number one single, I Love Rock and Roll, way back in 1982. And for years, I remained a devoted follower of all her albums. I saw her in concert up close at small venues and even got to meet her in person on a few occasions, which included getting to go backstage after a gig in 1985. So it was only once she'd become popular that I discovered that she was originally an all-girl rock band called the Runaways, and thus I found myself going back and collecting Runaways records too. So for me, this film was something to look forward to. Well, Joan Jett confirmed in interviews at the time that the Runaways movie is mainly true, but there are some artistic liberties taken. Ugh, I hate artistic liberties. The black-haired rock veteran Jett stayed on the set so that the young Kristen Stewart, who portrays a teenage Joan in the movie, could observe her movements and tics, and also to make sure that the stories stayed somewhat in the right ballpark. The movie begins in 1975 and chronicles Joan's early years as a die-hard rock and roll chick with a rebellious nature who learns to play guitar and wants to form a hardcore all-girl rock band. No guys, she insists. She stumbles upon the eccentric record producer Kim Fowley, a faithful rendering by Michael Shannon. I think he was well cast in the movie. And Kim Fowley, the character, likes Joan Jett's cool spunk and determination, but is more struck with the seedy possibilities of exploiting an orgasmic teenage rock and roll girl band with guitars. Fucking jailbait, he exclaims with glee, pumping his fist. Together, Jett and Fowley seek out other band members. They comb the dark nightclubs, where loud vintage 70s music by artists like David Bowie plays, to look for a blonde girl with just the right look to function as the lead singer for the group. It's there they discover the 15-year-old Cherie Currie, played by 15-year-old Dakota Fanning, who's not far removed from her first period, and who is desperate to become a singer. The Runaways are formed, with Cherie up front possessing no strong rock and roll chops, but getting pushed nevertheless by Fowley and Jett to vocalize and gyrate like a slut having an orgasm. The girls practice enough to eventually get signed by Mercury Records, and they take off on a trip to Japan by the time they get to 1977, which was the only place, by the way, that they struck it big. They were becoming there almost as huge as the Beatles in 1977. And as many familiar rock and roll stories go, Cherie Currie becomes absorbed in the drug world, and ultimately tensions mount within the group. The Runaways, the movie, was partly based on Currie's autobiography, and in a way, she is the focal point of the story. Dakota Fanning does a pretty decent job handling this type of slimy material, considering she was only 15 herself during filming. It's too bad, though, that her character here in the movie is just not that interesting, and for me, young Dakota never quite captured the presence of the real Cherie while on stage. I'm admittedly more biased towards Joan Jett, but it's Jett's driving persona which is the most compelling ingredient of the film, much as it is in real life. I was concerned that Kristen Stewart might think that sporting a dyed black haircut would be enough to become Joan Jett, but Kristen Stewart actually nailed the aggressive nuances of Jett perfectly. Joan is portrayed as the one member in the film who treats the band seriously, loves and breathes the experience, is committed and tireless, and that's Joan in real life. It's a small wonder she had such a successful and long-running solo career after the group disbanded. And Kristen Stewart's singing just blew me away. Both Stewart and Dakota Fanning sang for the movie. And Stewart sounds exactly like Jett as she belts out part of one of Joan's original early songs called I Love Playing with Fire. Unfortunately, the movie only gets to see one song rendered in its entirety, and that being Cherry Bomb, which is sung by Dakota, which was considered the band's only hit and was co-written by Fowley and Jett, specifically for Cherie to learn and to sing. The rest of the soundtrack is pretty good, with background songs by Bowie, Iggy Pop, the Sex Pistols, and even the real Runaways themselves. As someone familiar with the original Runaways recordings, it was fun for me to pick them out in the snippets I heard here and there. Okay, the problems I had, which kept me from giving the film 3 stars out of 4, I only gave it 2.5 out of 4. With that, there wasn't really anything we haven't seen before, and it's something of a typical cookie-cutter rock screenplay, with no soul other than the determined presence of Joan Jett. Really unfortunate was that the other 3 female members in the movie were largely ignored. Not so much Sandy West, the drummer, who died of lung cancer, sadly, in 2006. She does get a few lines and respectful moments within the film. But the lead guitarist, Lita Ford, who had some fleeting success of her own in the 1980s, was strategically left out of the action because in real life, she and Joan Jett's camp have undergone some personal problems. Ford says that Jett's longtime manager, Kenny Laguna, disgustingly, quote, offered to buy Lita Ford's life story for $1,000. Reportedly, Lita has threatened to sue if not portrayed accurately in the film. Okay, while she is largely disregarded, there are moments in the movie in which Ford, who, by the way, is played by Scout Taylor Compton of Rob Zombie's Halloween series, completely comes off here as a whining bitch. Most outlandish is that real-life bass player Jackie Fox was absurdly, completely written out of the story and is now replaced here by a totally fictitious character named Robin. Jackie Fox in real life was a lawyer, as it turned out, so one may assume that the filmmakers weren't taking any chances. So anyway, in 2004, one-time runaway Vicky Blue made a documentary called Edge Play, which is worth seeking out, by the way, for the real dirt about the Runaways. Joan Jett refused to participate in the Edge Play project, but it's got recollections in it from Lita Ford, Jackie Fox, and Sandy West. Edge Play, it makes a good companion piece to this film and doesn't pull any punches. I had some fun with this movie, The Runaways, but it's something of a watered-down version of what actually happened and could have been a bit tougher and more dramatic. So only 2.5 out of 4 stars. Thank you for watching.